To begin our review of enlightened despotism, I want to start with this statue here. It's a statue of Immanuel Kant, a man we talked about in our last lecture. Now, given that he's a German thinker, you might think, oh, well, that statue must be somewhere in Berlin or in Saxony. But in fact, it's in Russia. And I like using that as a way of trying to highlight some of the things that go on in terms of enlightened despotism. Because we tend to think of the Enlightenment and think about, oh, the people need to dare to know, the people need to use their reason. And it's very easy for us to think of the Enlightenment and think of democracy, democratization. Of course, it's all about the people. Well, not according to the enlightened thinkers, because the problem for most of them is they don't believe people are capable of using their reason, or at least the vast majority of them. The people, if you were, are an unruly mob. And so when Enlightenment thinkers start to think about ways that they can implement enlightened thought and enlightened governance, they don't turn to the people. They instead start to turn towards kings. They believe functionally that it's only these powerful rulers who are capable of bringing about the societal change necessary to produce an enlightened state. They, if you will, have the power to force people into agreements, force people into enlightened beliefs. And so, in tracing the enlightened despots, we're going to look at three in particular, take each one in turn. The first is a man we've talked about before, Frederick the Great. He's a powerful ruler, as we've already discussed, an astute military commander and military leader who used his army to grow the state of Prussia. And he also was someone who was attracted to the beliefs of the Enlightenment. In addition to having meetings with Voltaire, he championed toleration, religious toleration, allowing Catholics and Jews to settle in Prussia. He even championed farming reforms. A good example of this is he promoted the active use of the potato within his state. And it has a long legacy. If you visit Sanssouci, his palace in Prussia, you'll find that not only is his gravestone decorated with potatoes, but people leave potatoes in honor of him. So he champions everything from reform of government to perhaps a reform of eating habits. Catherine the Great was another enlightened despot. She was an avid communicator with enlightened thinkers. She exchanged letters with Voltaire and Diderot, the author of the Encyclopedia. In those letters, she showed a willingness to contemplate governmental reform, to question the policy of serfdom within Russia. In both Frederick and Catherine's cases, they were interested in how Enlightenment thought could produce better government, more efficient government. How could they craft a better, more efficient state for them to use? The last enlightened despot is Joseph II. Though he's the least well-known, the least famous, he seems to be the one most committed to maybe enlightened ideals. As leader of the Austrian Empire, he championed enlightened political practices. He passed, for example, an Edict of Toleration. What did this edict do? The edict abolished punitive laws against the Jews. It imposed limits on the Catholic Church and granted toleration to all Christian sects. So what this means is this Edict of Toleration truly was toleration. Previous edicts had been about recognizing certain distinct Christian bodies and all the like. This was him, if you will, really trying to initiate enlightened government. He's trying to tolerate nearly all religions, certainly farther than any other government had up until that time. And it wasn't just in religion that he made changes. He confiscated church lands and used the funds to promote education across Austria. And he also emancipated his serfs. He didn't simply question it as Catherine did. He emancipated them. Now, while each of these rulers were, if you will, enlightened to some extent, they had promoted Enlightenment ideals, or at least seemed attracted to them, the hopes that Enlightenment thinkers had in them were largely dashed. None of them succeeded in truly creating an enlightened society. None of them truly put in place enlightened government. And while you might think that sort of intellectual hand-wringing, oh, it's not as far as they would like, our next lecture on the partition of Poland brings things home. If enlightened thinkers had their doubts about these despots, their lack of commitment to true enlightenment is proven by the partition of Poland.